Hi everybody, and welcome to this webinar on the theme of coaching and mentoring in higher education. I'm Sharon Parkinson and I represent Emerald Publishing. So this webinar has been developed in partnership between the International Higher Education Teaching and Learning Association, or HETL as it's more commonly known, and Emerald Publishing. So you can find out a little bit more about either of these organisations through a follow-up email that will be sent afterwards, along with the recording of this session. A few housekeeping and practical points before we start properly. So all delegates are muted. So if you do have any questions, which we do encourage, then please use the question box in the panel to the right-hand side of your screen. We're going to try and address all the questions towards the end of the session. And if you have a question that's for a specific panelist, then please be sure to flag their name along with your question so that we can direct it to the right person. As I said, we're going to try and address all the questions, but we will see how we get on with time. So chairing the session today is Dr. Madhasu Bhaskara Rao, who is a professor in human resource management and organisational behaviour. He's at the ICFAI Business School in Hyderabad, India. He's also a HETL country director for India. So I'm just going to hand over to you now, Dr. Rao. So thank you. Muted. Dr. Rao, you're on mute. Muted. Yeah.
Sorry. Hi, everyone. I warmly welcome the panelists and webinar attendees. Coaching and mentoring, as you all know, in higher education is very important for effective personal and professional development. These are tools that encourage, challenge, and drive students to attain their goals. Indeed, mentoring and coaching aid personal and professional growth. They help academic and research staff learn and succeed. Coaching and mentoring enable students and researchers to discover fresh perspectives and insights that might improve their skills and knowledge and directly impact learning and development. As mentors or coaches in higher education, we aim to help students and research staff succeed. Today, we want to gain clarity in mentoring and coaching in an unpredictable and complex environment in which students and research staff pursue their studies. I'm joined by three distinguished panelists in exploring the ways in which institutions of higher education worldwide can gain from incorporating mentoring and coaching programs, as well as challenges and strategies that must be addressed. I'm delighted to inform you that our panelists are from three different countries spanning three different continents. Therefore, I'm certain that the session will be filled with a wealth of diverse perspectives and experiences. Let me now introduce you briefly about our panelists. We have Charlie Bonner Evans. Charlie is a professional services team member at Cardiff University and partnership manager with Future Leaders Fellows Development Network in the UK, which supports early career researchers through development of mentee-led mentoring scheme. We have Professor Beena Giridharan, who is a registered higher degree research supervisor in education and applied linguistics at Curtin University, Malaysia's Faculty of Humanities and Health Sciences. She served as Deputy Pro Vice Chancellor at the Curtin University, Malaysia for 2 terms, and also the Dean for Learning and Teaching for 2 terms. And we have Professor Carol Mullen, is a professor of educational leadership and policy studies in the College of Liberal Arts and Human Sciences at Virginia Tech, USA, and a J. William Fulbright Senior Scholar Alumnus. She is Editor Emerita of this journal Mentoring and Tutoring, Partnership in Learning. Thank you, the panelists. Welcome you once again. We will start by asking each of the panelists to share a bit about themselves and work in the space of their work in the space of mentoring and coaching. You can start with Charlotte to begin with, followed by Beena, and then Carol. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Hi and welcome to the session today, everybody. My name's Charlotte Bonner-Evans and I run an interdisciplinary mentoring programme for research fellows across the UK. We run a programme that is multifaceted, offering different types of mentoring and supports the Future Leaders Fellows Development Network, who is funded by UKRI. It's an international award-winning programme, and I also mentor for colleagues who work in higher education.
Hi, everyone. As I'm Beena Giridharan, and in my role currently, I'm supervising high degree by research students. So I work very closely with PhDs and MPhil students, and in that role, I play a mentoring role and also conduct structured programs, research training programs for them to help them build their goals, get on with their timelines and finish in a fruitful manner within their study period. And also in my previous role as a Dean of Learning and Teaching, I had conducted several academic staff training programs that were concerned about, creating structured mentor systems and for both staff and students. Thank you. I'm also a country director for higher education, teaching and learning. Thank you.
Carol, please.
Sure. So Dr. Rao introduced me, and just to elaborate a little bit, my current work in mentoring and coaching is very much focused on the development of doctoral students, particularly doctoral candidates working on their dissertation research. And I'll be addressing components of that today. And previous work has been focused on mentoring programs at professional organizations, and I initiated a number of them, such as with AERA. Thanks.
Thanks so much. Carol, generally, people use these terms coaching and mentoring interchangeably. Sometimes we use maybe knowingly or unknowingly, but can you tell us conceptually what are the differences between coaching and mentoring in higher education particularly? And you can be followed by Charlotte and Beena in terms of sharing your thoughts on some key differences between the two.
Okay, I'd be happy to. So, everybody, for this webinar, we were provided with an overview of key differences between coaching and mentoring in higher education. So I'll just add a few key points. One is that the frameworks, perspectives, and epistemologies, if you will, associated with coaching and mentoring have long been shifting. Mentoring and coaching share a kind of tension, and each has traditional and alternative conceptions. There are 9 types of mentoring that highlight different alternative approaches: formal mentoring, informal mentoring, diverse mentoring, electronic mentoring, co-mentoring or collaborative mentoring, group mentoring, and multi-level mentoring. Progressive approaches to coaching include developmental, team-oriented, compassion-based, differentiated, behavioral, psychodynamic, person-centered, and solution-focused. These approaches sometimes pick up on and continue traditional meanings and approaches. Mentoring and coaching are often confused, even viewed as interchangeable, despite the distinctions. Mentoring has long been associated with transformative relational development and coaching with socialized development. Consider the overlaps, though. There are many. Now, progressive approaches to coaching and mentoring can emphasize cultural and international influences as well as philosophical stances. Alternative mentoring generally targets the transformation of people, norms, cultures, institutions, and programs. The growth patterns that arise are not limited to one-way development. Mentees and mentors alike are learner, co-mentor, and change agent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Charlotte, can we?
Yes, thank you. I think important to underline for me is that both are learning conversations. Of coaching tends to be more targeted and action driven, and coaches don't necessarily need to understand or have a lived experience pertinent to the relationship, whereas mentors are often sought out for their lived experiences. Not always, but often. It's important to note that partnerships work very well utilising coaching models in mentoring. such as listening skills, giving space for reflection, and reciprocal learning is very important in a mentoring relationship rather than a coaching relationship. As a mentor myself, I always learn from my mentees, and I feel that programs should be developed to ensure that the mentors are developing as well as the mentees at every point possible. David Clutterbuck, who some of you may know, he says that coaching is 60% internal and 40% external, whereas mentoring is 60% external and 40% internal. I'll leave you think about that one.
Okay, thank you very much. Veena, you've been mentoring a lot of research staff. So what would be your perspectives on mentoring?
Oh, thank you. I think coaching and mentoring are both supportive relationships, wherein, you know, a colleague or a student is empowered to make informed and proactive decisions because of the feedback and guidance provided by the mentee or the coach, particularly in resolving problems, you know, planning their future and building their career. However, I think coaching is more task oriented. It is shorter goals. You know, it's guiding for specific task or skill empowerment, whereas mentoring is more long term. It's relationship driven, and it is built on, you know, working together as colleagues in a trusted environment. Thanks.
That's awesome. I think there are multiple perspectives, and the context in which we all operate probably make these differences. Now, again, coming back to Veena, in your experience, what do you think are the most effective coaching or mentoring strategies while you're mentoring or coaching the students? You have had a long experience and association with this. Can you share first your experiences, followed by Carol and then Charlotte?
Thank you. I think, you know, there are several effective coaching strategies, you know, in higher education. Particularly, I think, first of all, we have to understand getting to know your mentee. Who are they? You know, what are their needs? What are they bringing to the table, so to speak? So understanding your mentee, that is, I think, a very important strategy, so that as a mentor, you are able to provide them with the guidance and support they require. The next is creating a safe environment, you know, for constructive dialogue. So you need to, we operate in an environment of trust and confidence building. So it is very important that we create a safe environment for mentees to have dialogues. The next is helping them set goals and expectations and focus on their skills and knowledge as well. You know, so I think these are some of the effective strategies that we can guide mentees to fulfill their potential.
Thank you. Carol, can you share?
Sure, thank you. So I would say in my experience, effective coaching strategies for doctoral students include mentor feedback, individualized sessions, scheduled appointments, mentor availability, mentor attention, progressive challenges, technology efficiency, Zoom interaction, writing diagnostic, and scholarly development. So my reasoning is that these various strategies have been confirmed by research experts who identified similar strategies and by my own diverse doctoral mentees who completed my online intervention. So online faculty mentoring in a crisis is the context I'm referring to right now. The 10 pedagogical strategies proved fundamental to my synchronous online mentoring intervention. I developed and implemented it using 6 steps to assist my doctoral candidates when the COVID-19 pandemic hit. My mentees, who are full-time school leaders and part-time graduate students, all participated in this informal program as a way to stay on track with their dissertation plans and research. For the summative assessment, they completed a reflective survey. It prompted them to identify online strategies used in their individualized sessions with me. In other words, they came up with the 10 strategies that I listed earlier based on their experience of the program. The live video encounters helped them to meet their goals, so mentoring at a distance was not a sticking point. The COVID-19 Didactic Online Mentoring Intervention, or C19 DOMI, was the name I gave this program. All 19 mentees reached milestones, graduation or progression, and in many cases, conference presentation and publication of social justice-oriented research with me. I described the developmental and later stages of this program in articles I published in the Mentoring and Tutoring Journal and the International Journal of Mentoring and Coaching in Education, which is an Emerald Publishing journal.
Thank you. Charlotte?
Thank you. I was looking at this question from a program's perspective. So thinking about this in the form of a program that's set up for students or for researchers. And for me, it's really critical that the program has clear objectives and the intention of the program is understood by the students, by the researchers and by the mentors. We've also probably seen a lot of research out there that says that mentees drop out a lot of the time because they don't understand the program, or they have a mentor that maybe is not mentoring in the way that they thought they might be because of the program, because the understanding of the program is not clear between the mentor and the mentee. I mean, for example, is the program set up for peer support? Is the program set up to understand careers post-qualification? Is it set up to develop leadership skills? What is the objective and the strategy for the mentoring program, and how is this communicated to the people that take part in the program? Collegiate workshops where both mentors and mentees take part in the workshops are very important, and they've shown that they're critical to ensure that mentoring programs are effective and everyone has the same understanding of the program before they start in their mentoring relationships. So making sure the students, the researchers, the mentors understand the benefit and intention of the program, clarity and context is how I would see it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your valuable contribution. Now, coming back to Beena, can you give us some specifics in terms of coaching and mentoring, how they actually develop the professional development of your research staff or the academic staff? How can you give some specifics?
Yeah. I think particularly in higher education and from my experience, mentoring has, led to career advancement in young staff, and with structured mentoring programs, we could see really effective results in their career progression, in their research capacity building, and increased, in terms of their achievements in outputs, etc. I mean, in mentoring programs in research, I think we have started from, creating the right questions in objectives and creating the right research objectives. What sort of research questions can guide those objectives, and helping them build incremental steps in research capacities. I think this has been one of the most successful way in guiding young early career staff. In terms of, I think both coaching and mentoring are essential in higher education for several reasons. One is they help to encourage, challenge, and motivate students, for example, in honors classes and in undergrad programs, and for staff to be focused on their specific needs. I mean, it's very easy to get confused when you are first entering the university as a young academic. Sometimes staff are not aware of what directions or trajectories their careers, could be shaped by. So I think having a mentor that's trusted, that's experienced in their discipline is really very effective in terms of goal achievement. Other than that, I think, there's a lot of personal satisfaction and growth among the staff and colleagues that are coached or mentored. In terms of career advancement, I think, there's expanded levels of thinking and reasoning that can be developed by the academics that are engaging in research through these structured mentoring programs. Mentoring can also help a senior academic feel very appreciated by the institution, because mentors feel that their knowledge and experience is valued by the institution when they are asked to serve as mentor. And for the mentees, it serves as, they feel motivated because they think that the institution has invested in their growth. So I think this relationship, mentor programs, structured mentor programs are really integral in higher education to help young colleagues achieve their full potential. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And we know there is huge potential for using mentoring and coaching in higher education. And it is said close to 75% of students need good mentoring and coaching, and they only get, half of them probably get that. Sharla, I just want to get your perspective. How do we integrate mentoring and coaching in the curriculum and the research programs? What kind of challenges do you foresee doing so?
Challenges, well, we're always going to start with money, aren't we? And how we're going to integrate that and convince senior leaders that this is needed as part of the program. Mentoring in the past has been seen as a nice to have. I think now we're proving that it's an essential development tool for everybody, be it senior leaders to undergrad students. I think that mentoring can be critical in changing people's perspective and having the opportunity to work with leaders that they might not usually meet in their everyday life, being matched with people that are outside of their bubble, shall we say. So mentoring does provide that confidential learning space, that way to learn to be reflective, to development skills and practices, breaking down barriers between disciplines and industries, and supporting that learning of a mentee and mentors. As I said earlier, always learn from their mentees as they go through the process. Now, the challenges of getting this into programs can be multifaceted. A program might be set up in a particular way that it's more directive rather than reflective. However, it's got to have that companion of reflective practices and growth. So integrating mentoring into research programs and the curriculum ensures that you're providing a holistic program and providing future skills for researchers, for students, and for the mentors. And you're going to be enhancing the curriculum, the institute, the business, and the experience of the learners through the added value. I believe that integrating into the program, it should be targeted and set out in the program parameters that mentoring is part of the program to enable reflective learning and to enable mutual enrichment, and have that practice that broadens and deepens through continual learning in that relationship, and having the opportunity to work with someone that you might not usually work with. Within the Emerald book by Guccione and Hutchinson, who talk about mentoring within higher education institutes, they've demonstrated that mentoring and coaching offers sustainable investment to institutes. So where a program is set up with intention and clear understanding of the micro and macro context, the change in established organizational knowledge and culture through the individual learning, through the development of mentee and mentoring for students and for researchers and for staff, can be significant. And as Carol touched on earlier, that point of cultural change is always in the forefront of developing out and leading for researchers and students.
Well, that's awesome. And I think you have touched upon the personal space, the confidential space between the mentor and mentee. Now, coming to that point, Carol, what are there any ethical considerations? Because we are dealing with human-to-human interaction, and a lot of it has something very personal, particularly when you talk of mentoring, which is also got a lot of interface with the persons. How do you look at the ethical considerations that are required while being a coach or a mentor? And have you come across any experience where these have been crossed and that led to some complexity?
Oh, sure. We're talking about some ethical considerations, yes, when coaching and mentoring research students, say, in higher education. Terrific. So I would say doctoral students' learning curve suggests that they do not know many of the ethical considerations, norms, and constraints governing educational research. So it's important to be explicit when providing guidance through all steps. And you can see the potential for conflict and even disappointment where this does not occur. To address what you just asked, Dr. Rao, students' proposed dissertation research has to be ethically reviewed and approved by their home university, and in my case, the school divisions in which they hope to collect data. I teach doctoral students about ethics in my qualitative research course. I think that's really important that they have that kind of exposure. I also teach them about ethics through my online mentoring sessions focused on their research and by trying my best to model it. In my research course, I feature ethics review procedures, instead of just assuming they'll learn that later. So the students draft their responses on the university's institutional review board protocols, and they receive feedback from me. And in this way, they are internalizing their ethical responsibilities over time. And we discuss these issues as a seminar with other students, including my alumni who come in and provide their own wisdom and perspectives. Faculty research that doctoral students participate in requires special attention to the imbalance in power and student vulnerability. I explicitly model the components of ethical research, such as by clarifying that student participation is voluntary. For the C19 DOMI study I referenced earlier, a third party managed the study invitation, respondent replies, and the reflective survey, sharing only non-identifying data with me. And I explained all these processes to my students who are participating in the program as we went along. Institutional review boards can inform faculty and students in education that their proposed study with a pedagogical or classroom emphasis has been classified as not research. I don't know how many of you have encountered that in your various countries in terms of how education's looked at. So in this context, not research. The implication is that the study is considered low risk in terms of research ethics and potential for harm. Because of this shift, I believe that faculty supervisors must be extra vigilant and for student researchers to have the benefit of very strong guidance. Doctoral students in my School of Education must complete a course on ethics and integrity upon admission, which I do think helps with conflict later on, as in helping to mitigate that. And before collecting dissertation data, they complete the CITI, training course for responsible conduct of research, and that helps too to mitigate conflict. Faculty too complete training programs to stay on top of ethical considerations and requirements. Additionally, I've earned mastery of online certifications requiring high standards to be met in the ethical and equitable treatment of students taught online. And so the interest there that I'd like to underscore is the emphasis in the training is on the ethical treatment of data and of students in the online environment.
Oh, thank you. I went through the CITI training programs. I know how rigorous they are, but then they are not there in many other countries. I don't know, how is the experience of Bina in Malaysia in terms of the ethical considerations in mentoring and coaching?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Rao. Yes, we take ethical approval is an essential criteria for conducting any research on humans. And I mean, scientific research approvals are there for experimental research. And I think all of our staff and students have to complete an academic integrity program within 2 weeks of joining the institution. And Curtin being an Australian university, we have to abide by the human research ethical considerations of Australia and Malaysia as well. So yes, ethical considerations in research is very important. It's significant in order to achieve the objectives, the answers to the research in the right way. And often, we have to provide anonymity to participants. And of course, participation is voluntary, as mentioned by Carol. It's very important that we provide the instruction sheets and we provide a mentoring to our research students to model our own conduct of research in a way that they can aspire to. The other important thing in ethical consideration that we have to look at is that the relationship between a mentor and a mentee in a research environment is there is a kind of power distance, in that sense that the supervisor has the authority to approve their research in the end. And so then it needs to be conducted in an environment of trust and respect. I think that trust and respect and mutual understanding of each other is really important in a research supervisor-student, doctoral-student relationship. So when you're working with, the supervisor is often a very experienced professional, and we have to make sure that we are grounded in principles of trust, respect, and agreed upon goals. So the consensus between the study format and the way in which the research is conducted has to be made right at the beginning of the relationship. So I think these are some of the considerations that we have to look at carefully while we are engaging in a relationship in research.
Thank you. Charlie, when Carol and Bina spoke about the ethical considerations research, as Bina said, there is power distance, you are a supervisor, the student is at your disposal. But when it comes to mentoring and coaching of colleagues in the institution, does it differ? And in what ways does it differ? What is your experience?
I'd like to say it doesn't differ, but I'm not sure that is true. I'd say that to students, we have a duty of care that goes beyond considerations that potentially we don't have to peers, and also with students, we have that duty of care, especially in what Bina and Carol were talking about, looking at ethical considerations within their research as well. When mentoring for colleagues or peers within an institute, I think it's really important to think about the mentoring contract. So we utilize the mentoring contracts a lot within mentoring programs to ensure that in the initial couple of meetings, the mentor and mentee are agreed upon what the intention is of their relationship. So what does the mentee want to talk about? What does the mentor have to offer? What are the objectives of the relationship? And within that contract as well, within my training as a mentor and coach within the UK, we learn about the Global Code of Ethics for Mentoring and Coaching. And we apply this within the mentoring contracts, within mentoring colleagues, and within the mentoring programs that we run, such as the Future Leaders Fellows Development Network Leadership Mentoring Program. So within that, there are the considerations of having that conversation. Might be difficult at first, but having a conversation of when mentoring may fall into the remit of counselling and knowing when to stop, knowing when, being clear with your mentee at the beginning that everything is confidential, with the exception of if there is harm to others or harm to self. So those are critical areas that I think we check when mentoring a colleague and ensuring that we're on the same page. I'd also say we have to check our privilege, dependent on our role. Are we more senior than that person? Have that conversation. Check through how we're seeing things through cultural lenses, interdisciplinary, cross-company working. All these can expand our experiences and repertoire, but they can also cause confusion. So it's ensuring that we have that clear point of starting in the context of the mentoring contract and the ethical considerations, that we are understanding reciprocal learning, cultural acceptance, the context of the individuals, what you're willing to bring, what you don't want to talk about as well is very important. And as a mentor, what you might not understand could be important. So you only have a limitation of certain things within your own context as a mentor. Your mentee has another context. So it's having that consideration and understanding. And I'd say always be kind and always offer a no-fault exit to the relationship as well.
Oh, that's awesome. I think basically, though the mentoring and coaching are powerful tools to contribute to the individual's professional and personal development, one has to deal with these tools, using these tools with great care, and looking at the regulatory, the government considerations in terms of the ethical requirements. Now, continuing with Charlotte, you've been there practicing the mentoring and coaching for a long time. First, can you share with us one best practice that you have been using in your organization? And then we will move on to Carol and then Bina.
And this is for the effectiveness of coaching and mentoring. I would say best practice that we've utilised recently would be having that holistic approach to matching. So when we're matching the mentors and mentees, we do it not only based on objectives, but we look at the information given to us by the mentors and the mentees that may have a wider context. So when we're talking about understanding individual bubbles, we like to offer the opportunity to be matched based on a lived experience that potentially, for example, I might want to be matched with a leader who has worked part-time and had children, for example. So we like to offer that opportunity to be matched on a characteristic that gives some lived experiences, but also to be matched utilizing characteristics that can teach you something as well. So if you wanted to be matched with someone from a different country, for example, so having that wider bubble and understanding the context of the individual, of the mentees and the mentors has been really effective in our mentoring relationships and the positive outcomes for those relationships.
Okay, now let's move on to Carol and find out one best practice that she would recommend for effectiveness in the coaching and mentoring.
Sure. So I think what we just heard from Charlotte was really important with the effective matching perspective. I would add, as a best practice for evaluating the effectiveness of coaching and mentoring programs, something that my students, participants, and mentees more generally are constantly also emphasizing, which is getting direct feedback. Getting direct feedback from the mentor. And now I'm going to talk about programs a little bit more. Program coordinators, anyone involved in programs, it's important to gather direct feedback during and after participants' experience of a program or session So that may or may not be doctoral students. As explained in the literature, participants can reflect on their experience by rating their satisfaction and engagement. Also, they can assess their knowledge and skills before and after the program and articulate benefits and outcomes. So I think that's just hugely important that we're gathering their feedback, but that we're providing feedback, and those might be very different contexts. And while assessment involves hearing from participants about their self-reported experiences and perhaps reflections and recommendations, evaluation involves the coordinator's judgment about whether the program is accomplishing its goals. There's formative assessment, there's summative assessment, and I think both are key to improving a program. Assessing activities occurring during an intervention is formative, which allows coordinators to make any changes based on data. And assessing a program after it ends is summative assessment. And then a determination is made as to whether or not goals were met and resources were significant. And as we heard from Charlotte, resources need to be significant. Insights and conclusions may propel more improvements to a program. So just as we may give mentees or participants feedback in one context, say as a doctoral supervisor, in another context, we are being very intentional about gathering direct feedback and then doing something with it that's important and useful.
Thank you so much. I think there are two different perspectives that we have seen, we have heard, and both are very, very valuable takeaways for the participants today. Now, what would you have to say on the evaluation of effectiveness of mentoring and coaching programs from Curtin University's perspective and your own experience?
Oh, thank you. I think I would build on what Carol and Charlotte's been saying about feedback monitoring. However, we can look at feedback monitoring in a very structured manner. For example, we could look at feedback on how the student is facing challenges. So we can have specific questions around how the students or the mentee is looking at challenges and what approaches they take to overcome these challenges. Secondly, we can look at what kind of choices do they make when they are, when they face problems. Like, what are the options? There could be some options to deal with it. So what are these options leading to? And if they did option A, how did that reflect on the results? Or if they do option 2. So so evaluation can be more detailed. We can also look at consequences of choosing these options. So I think the feedback monitoring system can be very detailed and structured. And we should also provide the opportunity to the mentor and the mentee to have a reflective journal. I think journaling is really important so that, recording and evaluating can be more structured. I think so. This is where we have that feedback mechanism that is really, is measurable in terms of achieving the goals. So evaluation that is really structured, that is detailed, and that directly impacts the way in which the student is progressing in their research. I think that's really what can nail it.
Okay.
Thanks.
That's very nice to hear. That feedback is very, very important component of the evaluation. I'll just go back to Carol and want to understand what would be the frequency of feedback that you suggest in those kinds of programs.
Yeah, so it depends on what we mean by program. If I interpret that to mean academic program that my doctoral students are participating in, they want constant, ongoing feedback. So when they submit a dissertation, draft, or institutional review board protocols, what have you, they want the feedback within 2 days, if not sooner. And for the feedback to not be abstract in general, but very specific to what they're writing and what they need to do. So the feedback can be track changes or something to that effect in a document sent back to them. It can be a conversation that is very much like a learning conversation of a coaching nature, to help them to understand, which I think is very useful. Why this feedback? What is it that we're trying to get back from them? And how the higher order thinking that we're proposing, for example. One big struggle for my students is a conceptual framework, how they can eventually understand the literature review and create an effective literature review and so forth, with a lot of feedback and modeling and good samples. But to go further and to say, well, what's a conceptual framework that you might adapt from the literature or actually create based on your own understanding? That's not just feedback. That's something else. Like, we need another word for that, right? Because that's deeply educative experience, and that's something different.
All right, thank you. And now let me ask you the final question. In a changing world where the education is rapidly changing in its form and structure, online, blended, off campus, on campus, all kinds of stuff is happening, and the student attention is shrinking. Now, in this kind of environment, what would you think is the future prospects for coaching and mentoring? Can you quickly give your thoughts on that? We can start with Beena,
right,
then move on to Charlie, and then Carol.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree that the field of mentoring and coaching is rapidly evolving, and particularly I think we have the availability of tech and digital platforms. That's one way in which the platforms are changing, and also the mentors can be selected now from around the world through professional networks. So it's really easier to select mentors based on your disciplinary experience. And I also feel that, I have education background. So we see a lot of neuroscience, psychology, and behavioral science being applied to enhance the interventions, particularly in coaching and mentoring. And I think this is going to be a future trend. Coaches and mentors are also kind of creating communities of practice to share resources and support through online forums. And I can also reflect on my own experience during the pandemic. At the time I was the Dean of Learning and Teaching. And so we had set up a community of practice to share how, students were responding to teaching online, because largely we were all teaching physically, and then suddenly we had to be resort to this online mode of teaching for which many staff weren't trained. So I think communities of practice is kind of a very effective way, and it is kind of a trend that might stay on in this world. And more people are learning to engage on multiple platforms and network systems. Yeah, thanks. I'll leave it to the other panelists to continue.
Thank you. Charlie, what are your thoughts on the future of coaching and mentoring?
As you said, Dr. Rao, the big questions are being asked of and by students, fellows, researchers, and researcher professionals. And we've got these global challenges that require global, cross-sector and interdisciplinary solutions with disciplines working together. And I think mentoring can really support that in being introduced to someone that you may not necessarily work with within your department, or someone that you, as you said, Beena, someone international that you can reach out to now, because we can all do Zoom and other programs now. We all know how to use them. And I think that is critical to implementing these interdisciplinary solutions that we need in higher education, and also looking to develop the leadership skills of our students, staff, and development within higher education. There's the understanding being developed that leadership development requires more than expertise honed through research and teaching, especially in higher education. So building that collegiate and culturally aware environment for students and staff alike requires that contextual understanding, knowledge exchange, and learning from the silos of excellence that we've got going on around, even within our own institutes, and to be shared through mentoring and mentoring practices.
Okay, thank you. I think this is the final word from Carol before we move on to the question section. I think you will be able to tell us what will be the future of the coaching and mentoring in an era where artificial intelligence is going to play a big role in the higher education.
Well, I think that Bina and Charlotte gave beautiful, wonderful insights, and we could end right there. And I will try to put a little bookmark into the wonderful encyclopedia of ideas that they provided, all of which are extremely good and insightful, well said. To my point, I would like to add, let's not forget about the importance of institutional support and resources for making all this happen. We've entered, a global, digital, transforming era with the online delivery of coaching and mentoring, of which we're seeing, I think, many wonderful things and some challenges. I do think the faculty, we as a faculty and staff need the necessary competencies to stay on top of everything, adapt our pedagogical approaches, credibly leverage technologies. We need, continuing ongoing support and training for that. And we need recognition of our efforts in our programs. And that's not just formal programs, that's informal efforts as well, which come out of our hide, yes? I would say that institutional support and resources for making all this happen, we have wonderful examples in Bina and Charlotte who have been doing that. And we need more people who do this and understand how to do this effectively and credibly. And we need to be able to reward the exemplary efforts of faculty, coordinators, and staff. Mentoring is crucial in faculty development for long-term support and professional growth, as we know, and coaching provides individualized guidance and feedback. We want to be able to equip our faculty of today and tomorrow with what they need so students can benefit from the highest quality educational experiences possible. And I think that goes back to what is often the final paragraph of a book or chapter or article, which says institutions, administrators, and right up to central administrative offices need to be extremely supportive and understanding and do some of this work themselves in a very direct way, and go through the training as well, and to make mentoring and coaching a priority. And the way to do that is to go on the journey themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think we need to make mentoring and coaching a priority. We need more and more committed and competent mentors and coaches. And we also need supportive leadership and also the supportive administrative staff is what you have said. Thank you so much. I think there are so many takeaways for our distinguished audience online. I think it's time for us to look at the questions. I'll hand over the floor to Sharon to answer, if not all the questions, at least some of the questions. Over to you, Sharon.
So we've had a number of questions in, so I'll read out the first question, and then we can decide who might want to answer that. So the first question is, how can we deal with cultural differences in the process of coaching and mentoring in higher education? So does anybody feel, this isn't to anybody in particular from the attendees, so does anybody on the panel want to try and address that one?
I can speak to that. I think, we live in a very diverse environment, in most parts of the world. So I think, having a trusted mentor in the discipline, so that allows the colleagues to feel, the mentors need to be approachable. We need to make sure that we are available and, we have the right tools and knowledge to support the staff and students. Yes, it is a diverse environment, but having a robust mentoring, training systems, it helps. It does help in career advancement and satisfaction of the staff. We see that diverse equity and inclusion of matching programs with mentors and mentees from different backgrounds, is also essential. As long as we are in the same discipline, we have a lot to share. And we often see that, when we provide faculty mentoring programs, it has increased retention, for example. So extending the resources to all the staff. So that is one of the ways in which you deal with cultural differences. You can have diverse staff, but when they are treated in the same way, when we provide the access and support to staff that we provide to everybody else, so that shows the inclusivity and support the diverse environment in which we work.
Thank you. Does anybody have anything else to add?
I could add, I'm not sure. I belong to a mentoring program with an organization whereby they ask the participants who are junior professors without tenure, what they want to see in their matches to make their matches effective without the assumptions already made by the coordinators, right? There'll be options that they can extend. And we have everything from single parents who say, I want somebody who can understand the single parenting environment and context, which is interesting. We didn't really see that before. We have seen ongoing, I would like same race or same ethical background or same gender. I would like LGBTQ match. I would like a geographic match. We had somebody who wanted like even a specific region of California match, which would help with their research to be understood by the mentor. I mean, instead of making assumptions as we do in our coordinating and supervisory roles, if we can build that knowledge from the ground up, I think it really helps with diversity and culture as well.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question is about scaling up programs. Many institutions budget money for advising and counselling, but not specifically for mentoring. Faculty and staff often do it as additional duties without extra pay or reward or recognition. So how do you help colleges and universities support mentoring and coaching with facing these issues around resource? Who would like to answer that?
I can. I think, well, the last question that we were talking to was about what do we see the future for mentoring and coaching, and within higher education, the future of mentoring should be and should offer some recognition and remuneration for those who are mentoring. So we do have an issue where those people that are maybe from minoritized backgrounds or have had minoritized experiences, they get overburdened because they're asked to do a lot of mentoring. And individuals, we know that women do more mentoring than men and will take on that burden of that additional support for students and for staff. But there is no acknowledgement much out there of that additional support that they're providing and the additionality that they're adding to the culture of the institute. Within the leadership program that I'm running currently, we've been lucky enough to be able to budget in an honorarium for mentors. So this enables mentors to give us their time where it may not have been possible for them to mentor if they weren't offered some sort of remuneration for doing so. And we made it clear that we worked with our equality, diversity and inclusion consultant to ensure that this was part of the budget and what we put in at the beginning to try and start to have that as a norm and to demonstrate that it works.
Thank you.
I think to add on, I would just like to say that yes, mentoring and coaching can take up a lot of time of of experienced colleagues. So building it into the workload, I think, having reward and recognition definitely, but, like if you are on a particular workload, so mentoring can be built into the workload so that, it's really reflected within the work routine. And this actually encourages more staff to offer their services, to colleagues who badly need them, particularly junior, professors and assistant professors, etc. So I think building it into the workload, rewards and recognition, definitely the way to go to attract more mentoring.
Thank you. I'm conscious now that we're out of time. There are 2 more questions. So what I suggest we do is everybody that's registered for this webinar will receive an email over the next few days with the recording, and we will also put the answers to those outstanding questions into that email so that they don't go unanswered in that way. So I'll just hand quickly back to Dr. Rao just to close and say thank you. So, okay.
Yeah, thank you, Sharon. I know this kind of a topic needs much longer time to get into more of the details, but we must keep an eye on the clock, and it's time for us to close. So as we all know, all good things come to an end, and my time with the wonderful panel members is also coming to an end. I thank the eminent panelists, Charlie, Beena, and Carol, for their valuable contributions to this webinar. I thank the attendees. I know there are a few more questions. That means the interaction, you have been able to, rattle their mind and make them to think and ask questions. That's wonderful. Thank all the attendees who have who I'm sure would have immensely benefited and have some takeaways for the day. I thank Emerald Publishing, especially Sharon and her team, and the Association of Higher Education, Teaching and Learning, HETL, for organizing this wonderful webinar. I request Sharon to formally close this session. Thank you all, and look forward for seeing you all once again in future. Bye-bye.
Thank you, and bye-bye. Thanks.